Here are the top stories for today, August 13, 2021. The government announces the latest quarantine status of different areas. More areas will be under the less strict modified ECQ starting August 16. More life-saving jabs. 2 million government-procured Sinovac jabs arrive in the country. The private sector's vaccination drive will also get a boost with the arrival of over 500,000 Astrazeneca doses today. The health department slams disinformation on COVID-19 vaccines, saying it hurts efforts to contain the pandemic. The public is warned anew not to fall for these schemes. And a warning for online sellers: protect customer data or face charges as scammers take advantage of the pandemic to carry out fraudulent activities online. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. With the current trend on COVID-19 cases in the country, some areas will have their quarantine status eased while others will remain under a hard lockdown. In the latest report of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, Laguna, Iloilo City, and Cagayan de Oro City will shift to a modified enhanced community quarantine starting August 16 until August 31. The three areas are placed under the strictest enhanced community quarantine or ECQ from August 6 to 15 following a surge in the number of COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, Bulacan will shift to modified enhanced community quarantine or MECQ with localized lockdowns from August 16 to 31 from its current general community quarantine with heightened restriction status. The province is currently seeing a rising number of COVID-19, including 7 cases of the highly transmissible Delta variant. And as for Metro Manila, the region will remain under ECQ until August 20, while Bataan is also under ECQ until August 22nd. The government extends its travel restrictions on incoming travelers from 10 countries until August 31. The travel ban, which will supposedly end on August 15, has been extended in the following countries: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said President Rodrigo Duterte has approved the recommendation of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases amid the threat of the Delta variant, which drives new outbreaks in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines. The Delta variant is found to be 60% more infectious than the Alpha variant and can infect 5 to 8 people. Meantime, the IATF-EID has also approved the request of airlines to resume international transit hub operations. Roque said operations in the International Transit Hub shall be limited to airside transfers between Terminals 1 and 2 and within Terminal 3 of the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. It will also be limited to countries in the green list. Here is an update on the distribution of financial assistance to low-income households in Metro Manila and nearby provinces. In Makati City, about 52% of its residents have already received the cash subsidy through electronic transfer. The city government has been implementing contactless distribution of cash aid since last year. On top of this, Makati City is also giving away 1,000 pesos gift certificates for fully vaccinated senior citizens. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte has approved the release of funds worth 3.78 billion pesos for cash assistance funds. This includes 2.72 billion pesos for Laguna and 700 million pesos for Bataan. Meanwhile, the National Capital Region will also receive a 368 million peso supplemental budget for the cash aid distribution. The country is on its way to achieving population protection with the arrival of more COVID-19 vaccines in the country. This morning, a total of 575,800 doses of the Astrazeneca vaccine arrived in the country. The jabs are procured by the private sector under the Go Negosyo Dose of Hope project. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez and Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion welcomed the delivery of the jabs. Meanwhile, 2 million doses of Sinovac arrived last night. Galvez said 1 million of these will be allocated for the National Capital Region, while 1 million will be distributed to other provinces. Vaccine czar and chief implementer of the National Task Force Against COVID-19, Carlito Galvez Jr. says the government is on track in providing 4 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to the National Capital Region per month. Galvez said the 1 million doses of Sinovac for NCR will be distributed in various highly urbanized centers to prevent the worst-case scenarios posed by the pandemic. The government is currently prioritizing the vulnerable adult population, such as healthcare workers, senior citizens, and persons with comorbidities in the vaccination rollout. Galvez said the government will further expand the vaccination program to youngsters once population protection is achieved among vulnerable sectors. Manila City has breached its 1 million mark in terms of COVID-19 vaccination drive. Based on the latest data from the Manila Health Department, more than 1 million vaccinated individuals have already received their first dose, and almost 700,000 of them have received their second dose. Apart from Manileños, the city government also inoculates the single-dose Janssen jabs to seafarers and other overseas Filipino workers. As such, the total jabs administered as of March are already at 1,629,702 doses. The city is utilizing 19 schools, 4 malls, 6 district hospitals, and the Quirino Grandstand drive-thru as vaccination centers. The city government also offers home vaccination for immobile senior citizens and the bedridden. The opening of the mega vaccination site at the Nayong Pilipino will serve as a big boost in the government's efforts to inoculate more Filipinos. The details from Laid Kabagani.
National Task Force Deputy Chief Implementer Vince Dizon said the opening of the Nayong Pilipino Mega Vaccination Hub in Parañaque City is an added boost in the government's fight against COVID-19, noting that the country has already hit a record high 710,000 shots in a single day. He said more will be inoculated in the coming days with the opening of the Nayong Pilipino Mega Vaccination Hub. The new site has 8 ambulatory vaccination centers and 30 drive-thru booths that can inoculate at least 15,000 persons daily. Meanwhile, vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. said about 50,000 doses of government-provided Moderna vaccines will be used for the initial rollout. The Nayong Pilipino Foundation previously figured in a controversy after its former chief opposed the project over environmental concerns. Executive Vice President Christian Gonzalez of the International Container Terminal Services Incorporated or ICTSI assured that no trees were cut during the construction of the mega vaccination center. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Laid Kabagani.
Still to come, benefit of the doubt, the President orders the Health Department to respond to the findings of the Commission on Audit. And Malacanang says the extension of voter registration is up to Commission on Elections as strict quarantine prompts a suspension in many areas. Details ahead, keep it here on the PNA Newsroom.
Mga kabida, hindi pa rin po nawawala ang banta ng COVID-19. Kaya para masigurado natin ang inyong kaligtasan, hanapin po ang safety seal sticker sa kahit na anong lugar na inyong pupuntahan, mapamall man ito o kahit na anong establishmento. Ang safety seal po ay tanda ng isang establishmento ay sumusunod sa minimum public health standards ng gobyerno para maiwasan ang pagkalat ng COVID-19. Ating pong tatandaan, bida ang may disiplina, kaya #SafetySeal para sa ligtas na pamilya at ligtas na bayan.
Mga kabida, importante pa rin ang disiplina sa pag-iwas sa pagkalat ng COVID-19. Upang masiguro ang kaligtasan ninyo at inyong mga pamilya, hanapin ang Safety Seal sticker sa inyong pupuntahan. Mapamall man ito, kainan, pasyalan, o kahit na anumang public o private business establishment. Ang Safety Seal ay tanda na ang isang establishment ay sumusunod sa minimum public health standards ng gobyerno upang maiwasan ang pagkalat ng COVID-19. Ating tandaan, bida ang may tatak. Hashtag Safety Seal para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan.
The Department of Health said the special risk allowance for SRA of public and private healthcare workers in contact COVID-19 patients have already been released. Health Undersecretary Leopoldo Vega said about 400,000 healthcare workers benefited from the 8.8 billion peso funds. The SRA amounts to 5,000 monthly and is prorated based on the number of days that the healthcare worker physically reports for work in a month. Vega said the amount has been downloaded or allocated to different regional health offices, local government units, and private hospitals. The Department of Budget and Management releases the funds to the Department of Health for the payment of COVID-19 SRA to qualified public and private healthcare workers. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered the DOH to explain the findings of the Commission on Audit in the agency's handling of 67.32 billion pesos in COVID-19 funds in 2020. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Duterte is withholding judgment until after the DOH and the COA present their reports. He maintained that Duterte expects all concerned agencies to be transparent in the usage of COVID-19 funds. In its 2020 annual audit report, the COA noted deficiencies mainly caused by non-compliance to pertinent policies by the DOH. At least 11.8 billion pesos in funds for the COVID-19 measures were unobligated, and donations in kind worth about 1.4 billion have not been properly documented by the Department of Health. Malacanang urged the public not to believe self-proclaimed experts who claim that COVID-19 vaccines are not safe and effective against COVID-19. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque denied new claims made by Dr. Romeo Quijano, a retired professor at the University of the Philippines College of Medicine, that COVID-19 jabs are unsafe and more dangerous than the virus. Roque cited health experts worldwide saying all COVID-19 vaccines approved by the World Health Organization and Food and Drug Administration work against preventing deaths and serious illness due to COVID-19. Roque emphasized that health experts worldwide collectively believe a COVID-19 vaccine is the solution to the ongoing health crisis. In a separate statement, the Department of Health said spreading misleading information about vaccines is irresponsible amid the continuing threat of the coronavirus and the more infectious Delta variant. The DOH also slammed media outlets that allow professionals spreading false news to use their platforms. The DOH Technical Advisory Group member Dr. Edsel Salvania called it unfortunate that some medical professionals believe in conspiracy theories and engage in sensationalist propaganda without citing proper evidence. He said this costs lives and prolongs the pandemic. To date, 39.5 million doses of various COVID-19 vaccines have been delivered to the Philippines. The Department of National Defense is verifying reports about the alleged presence of a Chinese research vessel off Panatag or Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said the country's next course of action will be based on the facts that will be gathered by the maritime patrols in the area. He assured that the AFP provides all the necessary support to secure and implement our laws in our territorial waters and the exclusive economic zone. Ryan Martinson, an assistant professor at the China Maritime Studies Institute, U.S. Naval War College, reported on Twitter that a Chinese research vessel was recently spotted off the coast of Zambales. Martinson said the Chinese ship Haidahao is operated by the China Ocean University. Malacanang said it is up to the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, to decide on calls to extend voters' registration by at least 1 month in areas affected by COVID-19 lockdowns. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the COMELEC, as a constitutional body, has primary jurisdiction to decide on matters concerning elections. Roque also noted that the COMELEC is aware of the current COVID-19 situation on the ground. COMELEC Commissioner Rowena Guanzon earlier announced that they would not be extending voter registration beyond September 30, despite the ECQ and modified ECQ classifications placed in some parts of the country. Senator Kiko Pangilinan has urged the COMELEC to rethink its decision not to extend the period for voter registration. First Time Voters Network, a coalition of youth organizations and student councils, also asked COMELEC to extend voters' registration and registration hours and allow registrations during weekends. Moving on to business, the National Privacy Commission has warned all online merchants against disclosure or improper disposal of their customers' personal data. NPC Commissioner Raymond Liboro called out fraudulent online sellers in Cebu who were found to be sending items to individuals who did not purchase them. Liboro said these sellers may have acquired personal data through misuse, malicious disclosure, or improper disposal of information. He said the Data Privacy Act of 2012 mandates that online stores must use reasonable and appropriate security measures to protect their customers. Liboro added that online sellers are strongly advised to only collect and use personal data necessary for the transaction, be transparent with data use, and keep the data for a limited time. He called on online shoppers to buy from legitimate online merchants and read their privacy notice to protect their personal data. Up next, the World Health Organization is set to test 3 drugs as possible treatment for COVID-19. And the Philippines Tokyo Paralympics team gets more support from the government. We find out how. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Mga kabida, hindi pa rin nawawala ang banta ng COVID-19. Upang mapasiguro ang kaligtasan ninyo at ang inyong mga pamilya, hanapin ang safety seal sticker sa inyong mga pupuntahan. Mapa mall, manito, kainan, pasyalan, o kahit anumang business establishment. Ang safety seal ay tandaan ng isang establishment na sumusunod sa minimum public health standards ng gobyerno upang maiwasan ang pagkalat ng COVID-19. Ating tandaan, bida ang may disiplina. #safety seal para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bansa. Muli, ito po ang inyong lingkod, bumabati sa inyong lahat. Magkaisa tayo. Manila, God first.
Mga kabida, hindi pa rin nawawala ang banta ng COVID-19. Upang masiguro ang kaligtasan ninyo at ng inyong pamilya, hanapin ang safety seal sticker na inyong pupuntahan. Mapamall man ito, kainan, pasyalan o kahit anumang business establishment, ang safety seal ay tanda na ang isang establishment ay sumusunod sa minimum public health standards ng gobyerno upang maiwasan ang pagkalat ng COVID-19. Ating tandaan, bida ang may disiplina. #safety seal para sa ligtas na pamilya, ligtas na bayan.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Malacanang on Thursday said the anti-insurgency funds allotted to the Philippine National Police or PNP are not being used for political purposes. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque made the comment after Senator Panfilo Lacson called out the PNP for supposed illegal data gathering activities in several villages. Roque said the police force has been reaching out to communities even during Senator Lacson's tenure as PNP chief. He said the cooperation between the PNP and the community is vital to reduce crime incidents in the country. Last week, Lacson claimed the PNP is allegedly conducting a census using funds from the National Task Force Against Local Communist Armed Conflict. Lacson said the census may be linked to next year's elections. He said the police force must not engage in partisan politics. The PNP has denied Lacson's allegation, saying it is implementing an approach that deepens police-community relations programs. Australian Ambassador Stephen Robinson expressed his support for the recovery of Marawi City as he led the distribution of aid to residents affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Claire Gighe has the story.
Australian Ambassador to the Philippines Stephen Robinson just visited the Lakeview shelter in Buganga Village in Marawi City. This is part of the Australian government's continuous support to Marawi recovery. Robinson led the handover of assistance to beneficiaries of the Community and Family Services International or CFSI in the shelter, while giving assurance that the Australian government will continue to support the recovery of Marawi amid the pandemic.
And now, through our trusted partner, Community and Family Services International, as you know as CFSI, we've extended assistance to help affected families deal with the additional challenges brought by the pandemic.
The assistance handed over to 12 community members is under the Marawi COVID Recovery Project or MCRP of CFSI, which was funded by the Australian government. CFSI Executive Director Stephen Munsis said the assistance delivered to displaced families has three major components: the livelihood support, which can benefit 7,500 households or about 40,000 people; the protection support, which includes civil documentation such as certificate of live birth; and psychosocial support, including provision of assistive devices for people with disability or chronic health conditions. This project, he said, is being carried out in close collaboration with CFSI's partners such as UNHCR, UNFPA, Mindanao State University, the city government of Marawi, and the affected community, among others.
Sa CFSI po at saka sa Australian government, sokran po, maraming salamat po sa mga tulong na binigay niyo sa amin po. Mula noon hanggang ngayon.
Robinson said this year marked the 75 years of the diplomatic relationship between Australia and the Philippines, and the celebration is anchored on the theme of mateship similar to the Bayanihan tradition of Filipinos. For PNA Newsroom, Claire Gighe of the Philippine Information Agency Iligan City Information Center.
In our news overseas, the World Health Organization will test 3 new drugs for COVID-19, which will involve thousands of researchers at more than 600 hospitals in 52 countries. The 3 new drugs are artesunate, a treatment for severe malaria, imatinib, a drug for certain cancers, and infliximab, a treatment for immune system disorders such as Crohn's disease. These therapies were selected by an independent expert panel for their potential in reducing the risk of death in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. The WHO previously tested 4 drugs, namely remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, lopinavir, and interferon. Initial results showed that they had little or no effect on hospitalized patients with COVID-19 infections. In sports, the Philippine Sports Commission has increased the allowance of each member of the Philippine team to the Tokyo Paralympics from $1,000 to $3,000 or about 150,000 pesos. PSC Chairman Butch Ramirez said the board agreed to add $2,000 for all athletes, coaches, and officials. The Philippines is eyeing its first Paralympic gold and second overall in an Olympiad since Heidi Lindiaz's historic weightlifting gold in the Summer Olympics on July 26. Ramirez said the increase is one way for the PSC to show the spirit of attention they have to give the para-athletes. Aside from meeting the cost of living in Tokyo, the allowance increase will boost the confidence of the Paralympians. Philippine Paralympic Committee President Michael Barredo also thanked the PSC board for increasing the allowances of the country's Tokyo Paralympics team members. The Department of Budget and Management has approved the budget for the construction of another state-of-the-art media facility that will boost the capacity of government media in Visayas. Presidential Communications Operations Office Secretary Martin Andanar said the DBM has approved the allocation of 200 million pesos for the construction of the Visayas Media Hub. The Visayas Media Hub will be constructed within the property of the Department of Information and Communications Technology in Barangay Subang Daku, Mandaue City. Andanar said that the current administration is stressing the importance of communication to development. He said the PCOO's policies support the open governance and free press that President Rodrigo Duterte and his administration continue to promote despite criticisms. He added that these form part of the Duterte administration's legacies in PCOO. Experts hailed the discovery of bacterial species with antibiotic and anti-cancer properties from the soils of Mayon volcano. Researchers from UP Los Baños identified the bacterial species as Streptomyces spa1-08. The Department of Science and Technology said it was one of the 30 bacteria that were isolated from soil samples of Mount Mayon in Malilipot, Albay. Once the researchers have confirmed that this is a new species, they will name it Streptomyces mayonensis A1-08. ASEAN Center for Biodiversity Executive Director Dr. Teresa Mundita Lim said these bacterial isolates may be turned into potentially useful antibiotics and anti-cancer drugs. She said with antimicrobial resistance becoming one of the top global threats to public health, the prevalence of colorectal cancer, the discovery is a breakthrough for both the Philippines and the ASEAN region. Lim also pointed out the potential benefits that will be felt by the people living in the vicinity of Mayon volcano. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. The government announces the latest quarantine status of different areas. More areas will be under the less strict modified ECQ starting August 16. More life-saving jabs. 2 million government-procured Sinovac jabs arrive in the country. The private sector's vaccination drive will also get a boost with the arrival of over 500,000 Astrazeneca doses today. The Health Department slams disinformation on COVID-19 vaccines, saying it hurts efforts to contain the pandemic. The public is warned anew not to fall for these schemes. And a warning for online sellers: protect customer data or face charges as scammers take advantage of the pandemic to carry out fraudulent activities online. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day. Happy weekend, everyone.